Hey people, how are you doing? Welcome to episode 244 of the Sports Therapy Association podcast. My name is Matt Phillips, creator of RunShotLive.com. And as always, this episode is being recorded live 8 o'clock on a Tuesday on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel. In this 10th episode of our reflection series, I will very shortly be chatting with sports therapist Rebecca Stone of 𝐵LoSportsTherapy.𝐶𝐜.uk, also known as Becky, also known as Becky Carroll. I'm sure she has other names as well. Famous for her hats at Therapy Expo and all sorts of things people know her for. And she will be reflecting on episode 2, which was recorded way back on June the 2nd, the second episode ever of the podcast in 2020 with special guest Jack Chew of the Physio Matters podcast team, and it was entitled Imposter Syndrome. So very much looking forward to that. As always, people who have joined us live, then feel free to ask questions. Just going to bring a few of your comments up onto the screen. 𝐷𝐞𝐿𝐷, please do not ask me to pronounce this. Okay, Cecily Hislop, if you could pronounce that, that'd be great. Stephen Barr, are we on? Yes, we are, Steve. Thanks for joining us. Glenn Murphy, MBE. Go, Becky, we are all behind you. Question marks. Okay, not sure what that's about. Yes, we are. And Gary Benson, the founder of the STA, is in here to create some order amongst these people, which I think is going to be necessary. So great. Thanks for joining us live. If you listen to the podcast, and thank you very much as well, you're welcome to join us on a Tuesday if you'd like to ask questions to the guest or share the time with fellow minded therapists. Just before we bring up Becky for tonight's episode, I must thank last week's reflectioner, who was Jessica Janneman of Ease Therapies, who reflected on episode 222, which is called A Therapist's Guide to Hypermobility, that was recorded in December 2024 last year with special guest Bonnie Southgate. Obviously, I love all these episodes, and it's like, ask me to choose between my kids. Actually, I could do that. No, I wouldn't. But yeah, all the episodes are great. But I particularly enjoyed this episode, and it's of huge value to all therapists because Jessica not only comments and reflects on that episode about hypermobility, but also shares her personal journey and that of her daughter with hypermobility and Ehlers-Danlos syndromes. The discussion emphasizes the lack of information out there and the continued misdiagnosis that, in the case of Jessica, caused 40 years to pass before her condition was finally recognized. One of the most important messages to come out of that episode from last week is that the term hypermobility is an umbrella term. And as health practitioners, we need to be more aware of this. And basically putting the 50-minute chat into a minute, within this umbrella term hypermobility lies a very important population of repeatedly undiagnosed heritable connective tissue disorders, like Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, for example, but there are others. And whilst hypermobility is often one of the symptoms, as clinicians, we need to be aware of asking about other symptoms like gastric and respiratory issues, skin conditions, allergies, fatigue, etc., to help these people not wait an average of 10 years to be diagnosed and make the situation worse and put up with often an unnecessarily anguish-filled 10 years of not knowing what the hell's going on and not even realizing that symptoms are connected to one thing. So yeah, do check out that episode. For information and support on hypermobility and Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, then follow the exceptional work of Dr. Jessica Eccles and 𝐬𝐧, SEDS Connective. All of the links are at the podcast. If you go to the podcast app, you'll see the links on the show notes. As always, if you've got any information or feedback, then you can welcome to go to the YouTube channel, leave some comments there, or email me, matt@thesta.co.uk. Right then, let's crack on with tonight's show, Imposter Syndrome. So reflecting on past episode 2, my guest tonight is sports therapist Rebecca Stone. Let's bring her up. Hey, Rebecca Stone, Becky Carroll, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm okay. You got, for people watching YouTube, we decided on Becky Carroll on the screen. Just clear this confusion up so it's not confusion anymore.
I started my business, Rebecca Stone Sports Therapy, before I was married. So hence the difference in name, which is actually quite good because my clients can't actually find me on Facebook through my personal channels, only my professional ones.
Marvellous.
So it's very handy.
Yeah. Positive spin and everything. Great. It's great to see you back again. We were trying to work out, you've been on the show a few times, always well received and always well loved when people see you and get together with you at Therapy Expo. You were with us about a year ago Actually, it links kind of with tonight's chat. It was episode 183, Physios versus Sports Therapists, which was kind of a clickbait to try and get people to tune in. But that was a wonderful example of just people from different titles and professions just realising we're all on the same page. But I'm interested, before we get into that, for people who don't know you, Becky, could you let us know what part of the world you're in and what you do?
So I'm based near Tewkesbury, which is North Gloucestershire, as far north of the southwest as you're going to get. And I have been working on my own since 2007, so 18 years. So a solo practitioner in sports therapy. Oh, I'm also a regional rep for the southwest alongside Alex Moore.
Very cool. Yes. And we love the work you do. Very kind of you. 18 years. I look at you and think,
I know.
How? Where did that
go? Stop it.
Oh, stop it. Well, don't worry. I did the same with me. But yeah, incredible. I don't believe I can hang out with other people who've been working for 20 years. It just doesn't seem to make sense in my mind. But anyway, so out of the 240 episodes of the Sports Therapy Association podcast, you chose episode 2 to reflect on imposter syndrome. Why this episode?
Well, okay. So I hadn't long been with the Sports Therapy Association when I saw this podcast. And it resonated with me because it was only really when I joined the Sports Therapy Association that I realised that imposter syndrome was something that I was suffering with. And actually this podcast has helped me immensely to try and kind of overcome the draws of imposter syndrome. But I think that the one area where it really resonated with me was if you view imposter syndrome as like a product of pursuing perfection, if you can accept the fact that perfectionism is like an act of fiction that helps to quieten the fictitious villain that we name imposter syndrome, that very much was something that I experienced when I worked at Gloucester Rugby Club for a year. And my role as a sports therapist there was to manage symptoms. So to use my skills to manage the symptoms. The physios that were there were to diagnose any injuries, conditions. And I felt that I wanted to move more into the assessment and diagnostics, which I felt I didn't really have. So it was suggested to me that I looked at doing a master's in physiotherapy. So I went along to the interview and I realised very quickly that it wasn't going to fit me at all. All the questions on that interview were based around my experience as a sports therapist. How would that help me as a physiotherapist in the NHS? So all the questions were based around NHS. And so I thought, well, I've been recommended to do a master's in physiotherapy to further my career in the sporting arena. But all of the focus was on the NHS. So I felt that actually by obtaining a physio master's, I would probably actually add to my imposter syndrome because I come away not knowing what I wanted to go in to know, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. So in the end then, so you decided not to do the physios
yes.
masters. And what avenue did you go down then?
I continued working in, so I finished working with Gloucester and then I was working in amateur and semi-professional rugby, which I did for 10 seasons, and I was running my own clinic anyway. And life just took me down a different avenue. But as I progressed through with additional learning and I built my confidence, I realised that actually there was a lot more up here that I wasn't actually tapping into, that was, I already knew. I just didn't trust that I knew it.
Cool. Maybe for people who aren't aware, could you give us a definition of imposter syndrome and how it applies in the context of soft tissue therapist?
Yeah, okay. Well, the Oxford English Dictionary definition, which I've got scribbled down, is the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. And persistent, I'd say, is the word. that we need to focus in on. And I'm glad that I can say wholeheartedly, I do not have imposter syndrome, because thankfully it's not persistent. But it's interesting. It's not a medical condition, is it? It's not an actual ailment that we can, label, but it is a term that describes a pattern of thoughts and feelings. So I think we all experience degrees of imposter syndrome or symptoms of imposter syndrome, thinking that we don't know as much as we possibly do. And yeah.
Do you think
back down a rabbit hole?
Do you think it's kind of, I mean, before we talk about what Jack said in the episode, who's obviously a physio from the Physio Matters podcast team, do you get the impression that imposter syndrome is kind of more rife in non-allied health professionals? Or is there a perception that it is, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I can only really comment on from that perspective because I'm not an allied health professional, but I would say there probably is, purely because we would look through a lens of physiotherapy is a protected profession, whereas we're not. And therefore, does that mean that there's more weight behind physiotherapists? I suppose that's where you go mentally with it. But I think the problem is with imposter syndrome is, in my opinion, is that it comes from comparing yourself to others, right? So I think actually, if you just forget what everyone else is doing, what everyone else is, what their title is and where they've come from, their background, and you just focus on what you know, so you're focusing on facts, not feeling, then actually we've got a lot to bring to the table, which may differ, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It might differ from physiotherapy, and it does differ from physiotherapy, but it also complements each other very nicely. And we just need to remember that what we do is what we do, and what they do is what they do.
Sounds simple, doesn't it? But then the human mind, the psyche, and the worry and fear and everything, and the fact that humans are unpredictable. And I think that's one of the problems. I think working with humans is, and the way we're taught, we're kind of, and we've talked about this in other episodes, we're taught as if humans are like cars, and that we're taught that we can be mechanics. And some of us years ago actually called ourselves body mechanics and sports mechanics and stuff. And then we realized that humans aren't like cars, and there's not like a manual. And because of the nervous system in the brain, the fact we're complex, not complicated, that our patients and clients do react differently, and we can't even hope to know why this is. And I think that maybe throws a little spanner in the works, and makes us think, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but maybe that's part of our training. Maybe we're taught wrong. Maybe we should be kind of taught to expect to not understand or to be surprised a little bit more. Is that fair, do you think?
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Good. I'm glad. So this is a reflection episode. So you listened to this episode, and what were some of the points that you took out of it?
Well, what I loved was the irony of some things that Jack said. Obviously, he's talking about imposter syndrome, and I said to you before we came on air, I'm likely to do the same if I haven't done so already. But I wrote down a couple of quotes that Jack said, which one of them was, "I shall probably disappoint you." So he's already saying, I've got imposter syndrome right now. I'm going to disappoint you. And the other thing he said was, I am no one really. I just have access to a network of quality thinkers. And I thought that's great, because I remember when I was watching that episode the first time round, I was thinking, Jack Chu, who's Jack Chu? So I Googled and I thought, oh, wow, Jack Chu. And the fact that he then presented himself to me as human was great, because we can look to like the big wigs in the industry and think, they're quite godly and they're on their little pedestal. But in actual fact, we're all the same. We all have the same feeling, don't we? And so it was really nice to actually listen to the episode again and pick out that what he's talking about, actually, he's suffering with.
Yeah. And it's almost, I'm a bit of a sucker for it. I think it kind of lies in the same bed as being humble and not kind of too confident. I think a lack of confidence is quite healthy, particularly in our I think in life in general. I suppose sometimes not. It has its drawbacks. It depends what situation you're in. But if you listen to Jack Chew these days, I mean, with the empire he's got behind him in terms of Therapy Live, and as well as all the podcast episodes and the MSK Think Lab, MSK Reform and everything, he'd still probably start going, oh my God, I'm going to let you all down now because he admits he's like and I think a lot of my involvement in podcasts and things is probably being affected by Jack and his humbleness. Anything I can't master is his kind of trusting Manc accent, which obviously is the reason why his podcast is so much better than mine. People don't trust Southerners, whereas if you're a Northerner, sort of the earth.
They trust the beard, though. They trust the beard.
Sure, and he did admit on this podcast he can never grow a beard, so that's good. I did recognise that. Cool. What else then? So that was nice. Yeah, you noticed how Jack himself was setting himself up for I've got a bit of that, which was nice. What else did you pick up from it?
The fact that we shouldn't necessarily be wary of feeling like we have symptoms of imposter syndrome, but we should be wary of how we respond to those feelings. And what I mean by that is, if you're experiencing feelings of imposter syndrome, I think you've said this before, actually, Matt, where you said that there was a period of time where you were referring on constantly to physios because you felt, I don't know what I'm doing, I'll refer on to physios. So if you're constantly referring on to physios, then clearly that's not a good way to react to imposter syndrome. Occasionally we have to refer, and obviously if there are red flags, etc., then referring is obviously very necessary. But if we're referring on because we feel that we don't know enough, or we feel that we're not confident enough, should I say, then we need to reflect and then change that and think, well, what can I do to build my confidence and make me think differently about this situation? Another thing that I've heard thrown around quite a lot is fake it till you make it, which I believe is important with confidence. But if you're faking the skill set, then that's dangerous and you're stepping outside of your remit. So again, if you're feeling these feelings of imposter syndrome, but you're thinking, well, it's okay, it's just this thing called imposter syndrome. And so you just kind of, like what we were saying about, I had a chat with Tristan Attenborough and he was saying that the dangers of the other end of the scale, if it were, of imposter syndrome is that you just rest on your laurels by saying, well, what I'm feeling is imposter syndrome, therefore it's okay. And it's not okay if you're stepping outside of your remit. But yeah, so I kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole when I was watching the episode again, and what Jack was saying about the confidence element.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it was 2020, so 5 years ago, around that, long time ago. And I like to think, I mean, 5 years later, imposter syndrome seems to appear in every single form you go into to do with soft tissue therapy. It's kind of a bit of a buzzword at the moment. But yeah, 5 years ago, it was kind of like, what's that? What is this? What is this? But it's a conversation that's still going on today. But yeah, it's true what you said. I want to highlight that. Tristan Attenborough, who was reflecting a couple of weeks back, he did mention that on the show, and it's a really good point. And we should. It's healthy to kind of play devil's advocate with here. On the one hand, people, big yourself up, have confidence in what you do. It's especially if you haven't got that much experience, then it's naturally you're going to doubt yourself and you're going to have to ask others, and that's healthy. But if you're doubting yourself because Tristan Attenborough said that imposter syndrome, like your definition is where you undervalue yourself when actually you've got the competencies and actually you deserve that success. You know what you're doing. And he pointed out very well on that episode a few weeks ago that there's a danger now of therapists who are trying to do something that's not in their scope, and they shouldn't really be doing it or even thinking about it. And then they're going, oh, this is just a bit of imposter syndrome. I can go with this. That's okay. I heard about this, and it's not that at all. And that was obviously from Mr. Tris Attenborough. It was a great point. But people need to think about that, don't they?
They do. And when I was thinking about this earlier, the irony of the whole thing is that with imposter syndrome, you have a lack of self-belief and yet we don't seem to doubt our own judgment on that lack of self-belief, if that makes sense. So you're saying, I'm thinking that I don't have the confidence to do X, Y, Z, but I'm not actually doubting that.
So, I see what you mean, like a double,
Yeah. And you think that you should. And I suppose that's where you need to take stock and take yourself away from the situation, reflect and go, well, how do I move forward from this? You want to focus on progression, not perfectionism, don't you, really?
This is true. It's a good point. When you were talking about, I do remember in the episode I was talking about the early days. I mean, I was so lucky because I was in a multidisciplinary clinic for 10 years. I was surrounded by extended scope physiotherapists, great osteopaths, loads of experience. And it was a case of where I was like, oh, this knee is not doing what I thought it was going to do, or it's not responding, or I'm not getting a positive for this test when I really think it is this. And knock, knock, knock. Hi, Paul. Sorry, me again. What's up? Can you just check this guy out? Oh, okay. And time after time, it was like, Matt, you're doing everything fine. Just because it's not doing this doesn't mean just keep doing what you're doing. It's going to be a loading protocol. Do what you do. You're fine. And after a while, I was lucky because, I realized now, hold on, I can trust myself and go with it and wait to see how symptoms change over the week. But for clinicians who are by themselves, you haven't got this, have you? So I'm
No.
wondering whether that must be so much more difficult. And I never experienced that. So what was it like for you? Was there always somebody you could ask, or were you ever in that situation where it was like, I don't know what to do?
Yeah, there are a few solo health professionals in my area that I got to know pretty early on. I met up with them and we had a chat, and and then I realised, well, you're someone that I'm not going to reach out to, and you're somebody that I am. And so having that little network was helpful. And I think, like I was saying earlier, really that it was only really when I joined the STA that I felt like I had a better network to kind of have those conversations. But yeah, before that point, I suffered a lot with the idea that I didn't know enough. And I convinced myself for a while that although I got a first class honours, I convinced myself that they put the first class honours next to the wrong name. That actually it wasn't me that got the first, it must have been someone else, but they just put it wrong on the sheet, and I don't know, I don't want to get too wishy-washy about it, but my dad is like the oracle, and he's always really good at, going, look, just settle down, go to what you know, what do you know, and just keep it simple. And actually a very valid point is delivering honesty to your client and saying, look, the way you've described your pain, your injury, it's like drawing puzzle pieces in together, and do these puzzle pieces fit this puzzle, or is it from a different puzzle? And and if those puzzle pieces fit, then it's most likely to be that you're suffering with Achilles tendinopathy, and therefore we'll look at doing this kind of treatment approach and loading. And if we don't get the outcome that we're looking for, we can go on a different avenue, or I know someone that I can refer on to. So it's kind of like trying to put a positive spin on the imposter syndrome and making it more of a vocalized thing rather than internalized, by saying, look, I don't have X-ray vision. I don't know. But what I do know is putting us down this path that should make you better. And I think actually with receiving a positive response to that kind of honesty, actually, eradicates those feelings of imposter syndrome.
That's a really nice point. Yeah, that kind of, when you keep it all bottled in and start fearing that I can't say this to my patient, or I can't ask them any more questions, or I can't delve a bit deeper, or return to my subjective because they're going to think I'm stupid, when really,
of course you can.
Might be a time to go, let's have another little chat about this, because there's something I'm missing here, and because the patient's probably going to help clear that up, and you might have not listened to them enough. So yeah, it's a good point. I like that.
Thank you.
Well,
I suppose the other thing to say really is that within our industry, it's not an exact science, is it? It's ever evolving. And I feel like it's just educated guesswork at best. And so until we can say that our topic, our industry is black and white, there's always going to be an element of, do I know enough? It's always going to be there. But I think if we can, not focus on trying to be the perfect version of ourselves and actually accept the fact that it's a continuing journey of progression, then you can kind of learn to accept that imposter syndrome is a positive thing, or the symptoms of imposter syndrome are a positive thing. Just don't let it consume you.
That's a good point.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, but then again, these should all be things that are introduced on a level 4, on a level 5, and that's what should make up that kind of improved learning experience, as opposed to here are some more special tests, or here are some more ways of moving this around. You reminded me, actually, Jack says in the episode, he mentions how one thing that can help with this uncertainty you mentioned, which is natural with human beings, is following the evidence. And he says, there was a quote saying, evidence should be our guide, and that's one of the big unifiers. By following it, we end up with more similarities than differences. For you, is that something which has affected you, where being evidence informed doesn't mean just doing what's being supported by randomized controlled trials, but we have to kind of have that evidence as the foundation of everything if we're going to be singing off the same hymn sheet. And
yes, I am one of those people that I like to read the data. I like to look at the research and the latest, what's going on. That doesn't necessarily mean that I poo-poo any anecdotal element to it either. I suppose it's a balance, isn't it? And I'm saying to clients often that just because we haven't got the evidence yet doesn't mean that we won't. And that's not me saying that, we'll just tell you to eat cucumber and you'll get better, because one day we'll prove that it does. It's just that, okay, if stretching after your gym session makes you feel better the next day, brilliant. Carry on doing it. Although the research isn't there to support why, if it makes you feel better, then you carry on. But yes, I'd say probably 75% of the way I'm applying myself to my work is very much led by evidence-based research.
Yeah,
that still doesn't stop the imposter syndrome, though, does it? Even if you're 100% evidence.
I mean, if all you do, I'm trying not to annoy anyone here, but if all you do, if you believe that cupping, for example, is the solution to everyone who comes in your clinic, okay, and you're doing cupping, whether they've got whatever it is, let's get you back, let's do some cupping. If you start getting some doubts and thinking, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm a great cupper, but I really don't think this is helping, then that's where, if you were looking at the evidence, which kind of shows that cupping might help in some situations with this and that, then you wouldn't find yourself in that situation. So people who are doing stuff who are wholly doing stuff which isn't that highly supported by evidence, I wouldn't be, you're more likely to find, if you do feel imposter syndrome, it's because it's kind of like inner voice going, this can't be the solution to everything. So it's kind of healthy that you are getting it. But if you're following the evidence and then getting some imposter syndrome, but you're following what the research is saying, I guess there's a little bit of consolation in that. You can think, well, look, hold on, deep breath. I'm following what the evidence-informed thing. This is one of those examples where human being is just acting differently than what other people in trials have. So I think it is one of the reasons to make sure all people who are working with people in pain, you've got to follow the evidence, and you can do stuff on the periphery and do all these sort of things if your clients like it. But ultimately, if you're working with someone who's in pain and you're getting paid to help someone get out of pain or live with their pain, then the evidence has got to be big, isn't it? I think. Anyway, a bit of a lecture there. Let's have a look at people in the comments we've opened up some thought here. Becky, thank you very much. Daniel Alexander Williams who's been on the show before. People hope you recognise it. A great episode on communication, and Daniel teaches MI, motivational interviewing. So look out for that episode. Thanks for joining us, Daniel. He says, totally agree with you on that, Matt. I was lucky too, working in the same clinic and learning from Mike Grice. Good old Mike Grice. Everyone's lucky learning from Mike Grice. I've lost my place now. He was always at hand as a second opinion. That really helped my confidence over the years. I realised I was lucky with that. I wonder how I would have fared fared if I was on my own in a clinic? How would someone alone in the clinic and feeling low on confidence seek someone out to help or able to refer to locally? Join the STA as a given. I think what you just said, Becky, that's reminded me. This is where that's what a professional association should be doing.
Yeah.
And this is why, I mean, I'm biased and you're biased because we know Gary, and we know Gary's intention is not to sell courses, is not to try and make money out of a professional association. In fact, he's left another association or organization because that's what the priority was, to make money out of getting members. Gary and the STA is all about just providing support. So people who are solo therapists, if you've got questions, the idea is you can go to one of the coffee chats, you can collaborate and talk and discuss things with fellow therapists and get the support there. So yeah, that's the idea anyway. So that
mentioning Mike Grice actually, because I do his anatomy sessions on a Monday, and I spoke to him once about, because he's so knowledgeable and the way he presents, you think it's all up here. And I said to him, like, do you have to prep, for each week and each section you're presenting, or do you just know it all? He was like, absolutely not. I have to prepare. I have to go over. And I was like, oh, thank God. Because you do have this idea that you need to learn it all and retain it all and be able to regurgitate it all. And it was so nice for him to be like, no, I have to keep going over it, which is why he's presenting, the anatomy course that he does, is because it's so important to go over and over and over it. So again, like I was saying earlier, it made him very much human to me, which was nice, because we all have to keep learning.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, Mike's a great example of what an educator should be, without a doubt. Jessica Janneman from, thanks for joining us. Jessica from last week I was talking about. Jessica says, I really like that idea. I'll work out what idea it was. I think it was incredibly freeing when I learned I could say I don't know and it would all be okay. Yeah, exactly. I think that's such an important, if you can honestly look at your patient in the eyes and go, this isn't what I expected. This is interesting, but this is what humans do. And have that conversation. The patient's not going to judge you. If anything, they're going to like the fact that you're not treating them like a car, that they're going to go, wow, this guy's really interested. This guy's really like...
People can smell dishonesty a mile off. And actually, my mouth went from my brain the other day. I had a client in and he's a golfer. And he made a reference to 84. Like I had an 84 or something. 84 was the number anyway. I went, oh, and he went, oh, do you know what that is? And I said, actually, you know what? I have no idea why I responded that way, because I don't understand golf at all. And I thought I could have very easily gone down an avenue where I got into sticky waters, because I obviously sounded like I knew what I was on about, but I didn't.
Yeah, we all do that sometimes, don't we? But it's good that you didn't just continue it going, oh yeah, an 84. Yeah, 84.
I've done that before as well, and it's just not a clever idea.
It's not, but it's true. Yeah, Jessica, it is so freeing, isn't it? But again, it's to do with our training, and unless you get a great educator, then most traditional systems are setting you up as the expert and the fixer, the person with the white coat who is going to fix everything, and that's not. It does work with cars, but with cars, if it doesn't work, you just scrap it and throw it away. With human beings, no, you can't do that. You're not a mechanic. You just got to persevere and find out what works for that person, or listen to them and let them tell you what works. So, great point, Jessica. Thanks so much for joining us after last week. Stephen Barr says, even following the evidence. Oh, I was going to do an accent then. Even following the evidence, we still doubt ourselves, don't we? Yeah, true. But I think it provides having that foundation, a confidence. The evidence shows that we shouldn't just rely on the evidence. I mean, that's what evidence informed is. The 3 pillars of the stool is like, don't just follow the evidence because it won't give you everything. So the evidence is, the patient's expectation is really important, and what works in clinic and contextual effects.
I've just seen Gary's comment.
Which is that?
Gary? I respectfully decline that one, Gary. Thank you.
Gary Benson, founder of the STA, says, I'd be very happy to spend a few hours bringing you up to speed on golf terminology and etiquette, Becky. There you go. He will as well, though. Just call him.
Oh, I know he would, yeah. But no, thank you.
Oh, you're doing a Phoebe there.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't want to.
I really wish I could, but I don't want to.
Excellent. So looking back at Jack's episode, I mean, actually, now that we've been speaking of Gary, Gary mentions, and it was so nice to hear this at the end of the episode, because I do take pride in the sort of information collectively we were talking about and giving out 5 years ago. And back then, Gary said, the biggest thing I would like to change is the way therapists see other local therapists as competition instead of allies. And that was, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised from Gary saying things like this, leading the pack. But I think that's part maybe of imposter syndrome as well. Just if you're not communicating with your therapist, if you're not collaborating, if you're holding everything in and competing, then you're going to have so much self-doubt. So have you found...
Oh, sorry.
No, go on. Have you found that? I was wondering whether collaboration and talking with others has helped.
Well, what I was going to say was, when I first graduated in 2007, the first CPD course I did, they started off by, doing their, so who are you and where are you from? And there were, I think, 2 or 3 of us that were sports therapists in the room full of maybe 40 or 50 people. And when I introduced myself and said I was a sports therapist, there was a from the room. And I kid you not, they physically divided the room between physiotherapists, sports therapists, and other.
Oh, really? And
in that moment, I felt, oh dear, I've made enemies here, and it's very much us and them. And I'm glad that I've not experienced that, certainly in recent years. And the more conversations I have with physiotherapists in particular, I've been really positive, as like I was saying earlier, this is what I do, this is what you do, and how can we work together? And I've got a couple of really lovely physiotherapists in my area that we work together. So I feel like that the competition element has definitely, for me personally, drifted away. Mm-hmm. Although I feel like I might be conjuring up some competition now by putting that out into the universe. But I feel like sports therapy is a little bit more understood by physiotherapy now. I'd like to think, anyway.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a movement towards it. I mean, we're all in our little confirmation bias a little bit because of the kind of guests we have on the show. But, we've had on the show some fantastic allied health professionals and other professionals who on their website now are just avoiding just, targeting one type of health professional and having everybody in there. And it's lovely to see. So yeah, let's go with it. Let's go with things are getting better. I think so. But Jack says on the episode that if you do, speaking to everybody out there now, if you do have a bad experience with one physio or chiro, an osteo or an allied health professional, don't let that tar all of the others, kind of thing. Jack makes that very clear on there. You might even have 2 or 3 physios, but it's not all of them. And the same as you do on them to judge all sports therapists or massage therapists with the same brush, you mustn't do that. I think that was a good
one. Yeah, I definitely. I think actually what I've just said, when I do introduce myself to the general public, when you go to a party or a wedding or something, what do you do? Oh, I'm a sports therapist. Oh, so you massage people. That's generally what you get back, and that's rather irritating. That's still very much, the generic response you get. So there's obviously still work to be done, but there we go.
Yeah, it's tricky, but I reckon all professions probably get that, It's something we just have to kind of work with. How do you, what's your follow-up to that? Do you just let it fizzle out, or do you kind of clarify?
Depends how much I've been drinking, really. And it depends on the vibe you get, doesn't it? There's no point trying to vomit all over them with the whole, like, this is actually what I do. And, if they're not really receptive to it. But sometimes I have just gone, well, yeah, that's kind of about right. I've got to be honest, haven't I?
I'm a masseuse. That's what I am, a masseuse. Thank you very much. Drink.
Yeah.
Yeah. So collaboration, definitely. If people are suffering from imposter syndrome out there, then I was going to say, collaborate and talk to fellow therapists, but just make sure that you're branching out, not just talking to 100 of you, because that's a danger as well. Just watch out for Facebook groups and just hanging out in the same company, because that's not going to help you either.
Yeah. No, at the expo, Sports Therapy Expo, 2 years ago, I think you were talking about this the other week, actually, is that I made a purposeful bid to go to talks that went against my biases, just to try and kind of change my perspective a little bit. And it was beneficial, but I did find myself going, I knew I shouldn't have come in here.
But it is good. It's good that you crossed that step. Yeah.
But that's all part of the imposter syndrome and getting over it, isn't it? It's like it's reflecting on it and thinking, how do I change this?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, without a doubt. Right, time is ticking on. We are trying to keep these episodes shorter because people say they're more likely to start it if it ends sooner than an hour. So just a quick mention on the topic of collaboration. This is something which we are very conscious of, and we are highlighting and putting together into the program for this year's STA Southwest Conference, which is happening in Exmouth, hosted by the ST Score and Hands-on Hub on September the 20th and the 21st. I'm going to be emceeing it, you'll be pleased to know, over the 2 days, and also giving a talk on day 2 called Mindful Strides, Communication Skills when Working with Runners. But the whole conference has been designed with collaboration and reflection in mind. What we're trying to do is kind of provide a healthier learning environment, should we say, where you are going to have to talk to each other, reflect, speak out loud, and kind of, well, you don't have to do it, it's totally up to you, but you're going to be invited to do it. Because that's part of the learning process. I mean, otherwise it's just going to be another conference where you go there, listen to loads of people, and get back to clinic on Monday morning and think, I can't remember any of that. What the hell was that all about? So I do encourage you, if you're in that region, it is a regional thing, so we're not expecting you to travel too far. You can if you want to. I'd recommend you give it a go if you can. But yeah, if you're in that area around Exmouth, Devon, then September the 20th and 21st is when we're going to be there. Tickets are on sale at the @stschool.co.uk. There's a substantial early bird discount until the end of June. And there's an STA member discount until the end of June as well, that you will find in the normal places, STA Facebook member page, for example. Or if you can't find it, then obviously Matt at the sta.co.uk, and we'll help you out with that. Hopefully see some of you there. Right then, tonight we've been reflecting on episode 2, Imposter Syndrome, that was recorded June the 2nd, 2020, with Jack Chew, the Physiotherapists team. And my wonderful reflecting guest has been sports therapist Rebecca Stone / Becky Carroll of glosssportstherapy.co.uk. Becky, if people have enjoyed what you're saying, then what's the easiest way for them to keep in contact with you and follow you?
Be on Facebook, Becky Stone Sports Therapy. I do have Instagram, but I'm a bit of a dinosaur and therefore don't use it. But give it a go.
And your website, gloss-sportstherapy.co.uk.
Yeah.
It's there as well. Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for giving me your time again. It's lovely to see you again.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it was a given. I love the way your mind works, and I think you're inspiring, as I said quite a few times every time you've been on the show. You are inspirational, but don't let it get too big. I like to see a little bit of that imposter syndrome always in you. It's nice. Thanks everyone for joining us live. And people listen to the podcast, if you'd like to tune in and join us next week, then on June the 10th, my reflecting guest is going to be Sophie Gover, the rundoctor.co.uk, who has chosen to reflect on episode 146 of the Sports Therapy Association podcast, which was entitled Gait Analysis for Runners, a Modern Approach, which was actually back in 2023 when Gary decided to turn the tables on me and interview me about the topic of gait analysis for runners. So a little bit weird. I'm going to be talking to someone who's going to be reflecting on an episode where I was the guest on it, but we'll work it out somehow. It'd be lovely to see Sophie Gover again of rundoctor.co.uk, and it'd be a great episode if you're interested in anything to do with running and gait analysis. So you are welcome to join us live for that if you want, Tuesday 8 o'clock on June the 10th. Otherwise, it will be available a few days later on all your favorite podcast apps. Right then, thank you so much, everybody. People joining us live are raving over you. Really enjoyed that. Thank you, says Jessica Janneman. Jessica, it was a tough pitch after last week's episode, which is record-breaking in terms of feedback and downloads. Then, Becky had it tough, but did us proud. Becky did us proud from Gloucestershire. It was great, as expected. Stevie Barr says, nice chat, Becky and Matt. Okay, thanks. ... Thanks, Stevie, for your Glasgow welcome. And Sir Glenn Murphy, MBE, says, agree with all that you said, Becky. Well done. There we
Oh,
go.
thank
Fantastic.
you.
Which is nice as well. Thanks, Pete, for joining us live. It's so nice to see you in here. And I do thank you. It makes it having some people in here and everyone who downloads it as well. Right then, that's it, everybody. Thank you once again to Becky Carroll. Hopefully we'll see some of you next Tuesday. If you do enjoy what we do please leave a rating and a review. It takes a couple of minutes because it just helps the good word of our guests get out there. Take care and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.